Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Alex Finley, and I'm chairing today's Extractive Industries webinar. Welcome to it. Today's going to be given by Rezki, who is a PhD researcher at the Camborne School of Mines. The talk is on regional governance to generate resilient communities in coping with sudden mining closure and to sustain mineral benefits. So it's very interesting, a bit different from what we normally have, so I'm really looking forward to hearing it. Just a couple of notes before we start. First of all, I'd like to let you know that our conference will be going ahead this autumn. Due to the ongoing uncertainty over COVID, though, it will be a one-day online event, and details of this will be coming out before too long. All our previous webinars and this one will be available on our website and our YouTube channel, and I've put a link to this in our chat box, in the chat box on this talk if you want it. Today's talks will be approximately 30 minutes long, giving plenty of time for question and answers afterwards. And if you do have a question, please could I ask that you type it into the Q&A box rather than the chat box, so that makes it just a lot easier for Clive and myself to keep track of them. And with that, I'll pass over to Rezki.
Thank you very much, Alex. And as you say that this topic is quite a little bit different that we have discussed before in the EIG webinar. Now we are talking about regional governance to generate resilient communities in coping with sudden mine closure and sustaining mineral benefits. The idea of this discussion is actually about how to generate resilient communities, how to make sure that mining regions will sustain mineral benefits after the mine closure, while in the same time preparing the worst case of mining industry. Since the sudden mine closure is, we will talk about it later, that pretty rare discussed, but in fact, it's not very rare case, actually. I'm gonna start this discussion today from these two pictures. The first one on the left, we can see that the increasing demand of mineral production worldwide in the last 70 to almost 100 years. As we can see, many mineral and metals are increasing from last 70 years and almost exactly exponential in this last, particularly in the last 50 years. We can see aluminium, chromium, and copper, and so on. And in the same time, the delay between the mineral discovery and the mining development tend to be decreasing over time. If we can see from this graph that if around 50 years ago, a mining company could delay the mineral discovery and mining development until 40 to 50 years. But what is happening today is the gap only about 10 or 20 years, but so many mining companies even make it closer to less than 10 years. So this graph is they are very interesting to see that mining is even more dynamic today. We can also see from these two pictures that in modern life, when we are doing this online webinar, we use electronic devices, we use laptops, and which contain many mineral elements in it. And if you are also moving to a more greener energy, we also know that solar panel and wind turbine also require minerals, metals like aluminium, nickel, cobalt, and so on. It means that minerals mining and even more urgent to support the fundamental of human development, even if we move from like traditional or conventional energy like fossil fuel to green energy, still they require minerals to support it. But mining also is even more challenging too. There is database from Australia released in 2011 that around 1,000 cases of global mine closure from 1981 to 2009. It states that only around 75% of these cases are classified or are subjects to sudden or premature or unplanned closure. Only 25% of these cases are classified as resource depletion. The reason of the closure is resource depletion, like what actually the mining company planned before. And if we dig more details, the contributing factors of this sudden or premature closure, most of them are because of economic reasons and also efficiency and government intervention. I think in the near future, these contributing factors may be a little bit added more. We can see now from the because of this pandemic, there are quite a few sudden or like temporary closure, and if the mining company could not sustain the financial performance, and it's going to be like eternal or like the real mine sudden mine closure. And even if the resource are still there, but it's not economically feasible anymore to mine. And the case of sudden and unemployment closure is a very global case now. I try to pick up some example here from in Indonesia, where I came from in 1992, in Singapore Island, and also in South Africa, in China, in Canada. And there is also here actually, where I live now and study in Cornwall. But it's quite identical what was happened in Singapore Island, Indonesia, and the sudden mine closure here happened was around in 1986, yeah, when and 90 until 1990s, when the last tin mining here suddenly closed because of the tin price. But from this table also I can see that there are not so many cases of sudden and mine closure, despite the numbers of global number of this case. There are quite rare cases that really deeply studies. Like here, I didn't include this the case of Cornwall here, for instance, because it's not easy. I would say that I couldn't find any peer review research on what the characteristic, what was happened at the time. I mean, what the result of the sudden mine closure here in Cornwall. Yeah, and some of the cases also successful cases, how economic transition like in rural Germany, but that is not the case of sudden closure. And some also in Russia, like in it's successful mine closure, but also we have no data about whether it's sudden or premature closure or not. But there is a successful premature closure like in Canada, that I will discuss also later in this presentation, that even if they suffer sudden mine closure, but they can still sustain the mineral benefit after that, and we will find later how it's going to work. But most of the cases, sudden mine closure will not sustain the mineral benefit. Okay, but as I said, that very little deep discussion about that. Right, and even if we come to sudden successful mine closure, this is also database from Australia. Just I received a few days ago that around from 1800 mine closures in Australia, only one of them is classified as successful relinquish. Yeah, yeah. Most of them is register or identify as inactive. Legally speaking, they are legal, they have legal, but they don't have activities there. And if we dig more details in these cases, like we can see from these inserts here, most of them like the care and maintenance, quite a few, but again, successful relinquish is only one cases of almost 2,000 sudden 2,000 mine closure in Australia. This also implies, even if it's not represent the whole situation today, but we can see from this picture also that actually, despite our intention to bring more interest in mining closure, we are not as good as we expected in this term. Okay, I will present here the case studies of unsustainable development in mineral-rich regions, which is in Singkap Island, Indonesia. The tin mining lasts quite long and more than 100 years, almost 200 years, and it was just shut down in 1992. Okay, here is the region here. You can see from this map. Singkap is one island here, and Bangka and Belitung. Bangka is quite famous actually if you talk about nickels, and Belitung if we talk about BHP Biliton, and this is the name of the island, the Bilitung. And the discovery of tin mining here in 1990s had made this region surpass Cornwall as the largest world tin producer at the time. Okay, I took an example of this Singkap Island because it is quite isolated, and tin mining was the main economic activities there, and relatively minimum activities from outside. So in analyzing, I can say it is a lab scale, but in real life of mining industry. The field work for data collection, I delivered around 27 questions each for 170 respondents, including also interview, one-on-one, and also focus group discussion. And I did also observation in public spaces, seaports, and so on. And for the interview, I have to acknowledge my local context there, who helped me to find local context. And because it's quite sensitive issue, and my local contact had to approach the informant first and convince them that will be ethically, will be conducted proportionally and without just let the informant be comfortable first, and then I can approach them. And after that, I try to assess the performance of tin mining industry in the past, and most of them reveals that the tin mining was performed as they expected. For instance, like they create high local employment, and local community participation also was very high, especially when the mining company wanted to access a land, and they also provide education and training opportunities. And very few negative impact, only job dependency and community and workforce health and safety. But after the mine closure, sudden mine closure in 1992, there was a significant changes in income, was suddenly fall down. It was worse, and land quality. The land quality actually was the same, but what I see that during the mining, they didn't do quite much land rehabilitation, but the local community would just accept it because they enjoy a relatively well economic, their income was really high, and they really care about the land quality. And also the job variation was suddenly fall down after the mine closure. This is the table that I try to compare. Most of the benefits disappear when mining ended, and some of the benefits even turn into long-term losses. We can see also from this graph that the population growth of the island was fall, and it can just regrow after 10 years. This implied that how less interest the island was after the mining closure. This is the case after the closure. You can see there's a lot of land like a voids here. It's around 1,000 hectares, and also they leave this former mining, and then the local people now using is a graveyard. And as I say that it was a sudden closure, there was still a small amount of tin there, and the local people unlicensedly tried to mine it in traditional way and without very good environmental performance. This is another case in South Africa. Just for comparison, I didn't do this field work, but I took from a report from human rights that one of the human rights association that The reason for the closure of this mining company was the liquidation, and the mining regions, the village was considered one of the wealthiest mining operation in the world and one of the highest per capita income village in the world in 1960s. And the mining company, like in Singapore Island too, the mining company provides all public services for domestic consumption, such as running water, sanitation, electricity, and rubbish collection. And after the closure, 1,700 workers found dismissal without residency pay, and most of them argued that they couldn't afford their life, and life increasingly difficult, and crime also was significantly increased after the closure. This is the example of this, the picture of this case there. And I will go a little bit fast in the like anomaly, I would say. It's not very common that a mining region that coping with sudden closure, despite they can sustain mineral benefit despite the sudden closure they experienced in just few years ago. This in Canada, and when the active mining, the mining spend almost half of the total direct mining expenditures for suppliers locally, and they can pay as usual very quite high remuneration for the employees, and much higher than the regional and national per capita income of the region and the country. And the total number of employees they work at the mine at the time was around almost 10% of the local people, and they have very minimal negative impact in the environment. And after the mine closure, it was estimated that around 10,000 good jobs vanished. 10,000 good jobs for regions consists of 5,000 people is actually a lot. But the thing was, the mine closure did not eliminate the public services, because when the mining active, the government took their part, their task to run the public services, and many former mining workers were hired by local businesses, because when the mining closes, the other businesses also, are still survive, and they can hire former mining workers, and they were quite fortunate in this term, because the mining workers was quite famous with this discipline, and they're quite hard workers, so they don't need quite much training anymore. And it is also interesting that the local community, after the mine closure, the local communities identify some economic potential that they can grow in this region, and the local government and the regional government support these economic sectors. This is the case of there in Canada. And what we can learn from these cases, that socio-economic characteristic of unsustainable development, mainly because of resource dependency, in terms of lack of economic diversification, and job in terms of opportunities and skills also dependent on mining. There's massive environmental degradation too, and low local economic contribution, and fail to transform finite mineral resources to human capital. Another question actually that I want to raise in this research or in this discussion is are they a problem or facts? In many cases, we argue that mining dependency, for instance, is a problem. But in this perspective, I would like to look at different way, that what if actually they are a fact? Is it a fact? I mean, effects come from real problems. Mining dependency may be not a problem, but is a fact that generate from problems, a more philosophical problem in the society. This is something that we have. I want to a little bit discuss here. Okay, the socio-economic characteristic in mining regions, it's generally generated from repeated and continuous processes during the active mining. It's not just happened mining dependency is not just happened. Lack of economic diversification is not just happened. It's generated from repeated and continuous process during the active mining. Mining dependency, for instance, may appear when the community is actually unable to access economic development infrastructures, financial supplies, and logistic systems necessary to develop competitive non-mining business. This was I meant by the problem. The problem is the community are unable to access economic development infrastructures. So the mining dependency was a fact that resulted from this inability and ability to access economic infrastructure. This is exactly what happened in Singapore Island, in Indonesia, and in South Africa, and it was repeated and continuously happened during the active mining. The mining job dependency as well, and also low human capital as well. And a combination of these characteristic might arise when a weak government exists. When a weak government that they cannot use the mining revenue to diversify economy, they are unable to provide essential public services and fail like education or like logistic infrastructures to the community, and fail to refill the long-term regional development issue. If this kind of government exists in the regions, and a combination of these characteristics may appear, and as a result, that communities are far from being resilient and independent. And even worse, because the mining industry attractiveness often blocks the awareness of these preconditions. What was happened in Singapore Island and what was happened in South Africa was there was exactly mining dependency, but this awareness was not discussed, was not realized in public, in the community, and the government as well, regional government as well, because they are living in wealth in mining because of mining. In the past, people from Singapore Island was like valuable guests or tourism if they went to Singapore, because not so far from Singapore, and the people in Singapore was really waiting for them to come, because they bring money, they brought money to spend to buy valuable things from Singapore at the time. And this kind of attractiveness living in mining industry has blocked them to aware that actually they are suffering job dependency. But yeah, as I said, that the mining industry attractive just make them unaware of this. And even until 2 months before the mining closure, they heard the issue, but they didn't believe that they're gonna close the mine. We can say that this process is not happen at one time. It's repeated and continuously happen during the active mining. And we can see also there are many stakeholders responsible for this. We can argue that mining companies responded for the contamination, so we can ask them to do like a progressive closure, for instance. We can and operate in a very environmentally friendly way, zero waste, and so on. But regional government are responsible for these other problems. Like mining is high wealth creator. It is very attractive to rely on mining. Yes, this is the level or the process that under responsibility of regional governments, that if they can deal with this issue, the mining regions and the local community will enable to access infrastructures. They're able to access financial support and logistic systems, because they really rely on mining. And all of this we can see. I will not explain in detail all of these variables, but this was an example that how governance process different mining companies. Some of these process are mainly responsible by regional governments, but mining companies can contribute it too. I will show later in the next slide what I mean in this term. Yeah, here is some governance intervention as mitigation strategies that because the problem was a result of a continuous process during the active mining. So we need intervention is mitigation strategies in this process. So the problem will be prevented and the fact will be changing. Like for instance, we try to propose a shared use infrastructures and early transfer infrastructures. The shared use may help local community access infrastructures to access the market, to access the logistic system as well. What was happened in Canada, the regional approach that the mining company and the local community, the local businesses can share the infrastructure, so the local business also can access markets. They can access also logistics, raw materials. Therefore, they can both grow simultaneously. When the mining close, these other businesses can still survive, and then they can grow, and then they can absorb workers from mining, which is was not happened in Singapore Island and in South Africa, because the infrastructures was mainly used for mining purpose. If you are not part of mining companies, you are not prioritized to use the infrastructures. When the mining closed suddenly, the local businesses cannot do anything, and the local people did not get used to access the infrastructures. They don't know how to use it. They have to learn how to access market using these infrastructures. But the problem is the infrastructures also was abandoned because it used to be used to support mining, and when mining collapsed, and it was also abandoned, and the infrastructures was not as useful as it should be. And early transfer also, because it was sudden closure. In many cases that we say that relinquishment was not very good at the time, and in many cases mining companies plan to hand over the infrastructure in the end of the mine, even it's not very successful. But when the sudden mine closure came, there will be not enough time to deal with this. This was happened in South Africa and Indonesia, and the local government, as the recipient of this, they did not prepare the human resources to take care of these infrastructures. They did not have enough budget to do that, and it was just rush and a very quick transfer. So this used to be asset, and later it was expected to be asset, but in fact they have become liabilities. So early transfer is very much suggested in this research that could be done as early as possible. Don't wait until the mine closure, because we don't know when the mine is coming. By doing so, we expect that the local communities, mining regions can sustain the mineral benefits at any time of sudden mine closure, while at the same time they can also prepare themselves in facing mining crisis that can be happen at any time. Why the last slide? Why this is quite rarely discussed is as we try to map and responsible or sustainable mining guidance and assurance today, and our 6 global guidance. And from this map, this plan, we can see that most of these guidance are focusing on environmental aspect of mine closure and focusing on what mining companies should do. Okay, so they're focusing on mining companies and they're focusing on mining closure. Environmental aspect of mine closure. It's not surprising, because these like ICMM and TSM are association of mining companies, so they help the members. But the mitigation strategies, like we discussed this, like a strengthening of the government role, serious mining infrastructures, are not very commonly discussed now. These initiatives are a good start, but we have to realize that it's now time to consider a social economic framework. We can see this from this graph. As a conclusion, I would say that mining crisis would have devastating impacts if mining regions had one of these preconditions, or a combination of these preconditions, like lack of economic diversifications and job dependent on mining, and massive economic and massive environmental degradation, and lack of human capital. Uh, Responsible mining and responsible sourcing schemes tend to focus on mining companies and environmental aspect of mining closer. It's been widely discussed with many scholars about this concern. But what we argue that it's time to consider the resilient socio-economic framework, and share action with government are required to deliver the best outcomes. Um, Mitigation strategies will assist mining regions at minimizing risks. This is the point of mitigation strategies, minimizing the risk that the mining regions or the local communities must bear following the unforeseeable mine closure, while at the same time they can promote sustainable development. And we can ask mining company to deal with environmental aspects, but we believe that governance intervention are the foundation for generating strong and resilient communities. It's not a sole responsibility of mining companies. Mining regions, the governments, and the local communities should take a more significant initiative in dealing with these challenges. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rezki. And first of all, thank you very much for volunteering to give this talk. It's great that you came forward with it. And I certainly, speaking as a geologist, it's all new to me, things I haven't considered before. So it's definitely opened my eyes. And it's great that this research is going on. I'm just going to open up to questions. We haven't got any yet, so I'm going to start with one. I mean, you mentioned Cornwall, and just before Christmas, I moved down to just south of Doncaster, so the old coal mining area in that bit of Yorkshire. Has this method been applied to the UK? And can you use your findings to help take it through to the UK?
Yeah. As I said before, that despite the common understanding that Cornwall was suffering sudden closure during the tin mining a couple of years ago, but very rare peer-reviewed studies on this. So we are still relatively new in this term. But I know Cornwall now is facing the second chance, because they stand to re-explore the tin, tungsten, and so on, and it's projected to support the green economy in the futures. And this approach can be applied to Cornwall as well, because, for instance, like how to prepare the regional the mining regions. So when the mining active later, tin mining, for instance, or tungsten mining, the government should aware of the economic diversification. They have to set up parameters that can speak about this resiliency. Okay, we are getting well from mining. That was happening in Cornwall, but they have to set a parameter of the resiliency. For instance, whether these mining activities can trigger the other economics and independent economic as well, not only economic that related to mining, but independent economic. And the government should have these parameters over time, not only one time, but they have to be a parameter on time. And what is happened today, and next year, and then the year after. So they have to set this, and they have to look after these parameters, indicators. Then they have to make sure that every year the community, the mining regions, is even more resilient from the day before. Like the job is even more diversified, the skills even more diversified, the economic even more diversified. So they have to set parameters to measure this. So this is a if it's not, and then they have to do something. For instance, they have to find out the reason of this. Like for instance, because maybe the local businesses could not access the logistic, they have to provide. They can use the mining revenue to help this these resiliencies. Yeah.
Thank you for answering that one. And again, has there been attempts to apply this to, say, the oil and gas industry and other industries globally, the same methodology of work through areas that have got big oil coming in and extracting it, or do you think it would match across disciplines?
It could be. I to be honest, I haven't got any application. I haven't got any application in oil and gas industry, but theoretically speaking, it's possible. What was happening in Australia now, if we compare Western Australia and in Queensland area, the main difference of these regions, one of the main difference in this region is sharing infrastructures. In Western Australia, most mining companies use their own infrastructures, while like a railway for the to access market, to deliver their products. But in Queensland, they share these infrastructures. The railway was managed by the government or one of the institutions there, and different mining companies and also different businesses can use the same railways, so they can unlock the other potential of economic there. So more economic or more businesses can grow together, which is the bottleneck of the regions in Australia. And the Prime Minister there was a little bit upset of this, because the mining companies insist to use the infrastructure solely for this own purpose, which unlock the other economic potential, like the other mining, which is lost, like a marginal mining. If they invest in infrastructure, it's not feasible. But if they use the other infrastructures, the existing infrastructures could be feasible for them to develop, and other mining, other business too. It was happened it is happened now in Australia.
Thank you very much. We've got a couple of questions coming in. How do you expect people to take on what are lower paid jobs as part of the diversification of work opportunities when they would earn much more working in a mine?
Yeah, is it hard? Frankly, is it hard? What was happened? I could not propose a specific solution for that, but what we can learn from the case in Canada, the mining workers there only work 4 days a week, and during the day off, they involve with other businesses. So in this case, more people can work in mining company, and they also can work in other businesses as well. So the income was pretty much distributed to local people there. I think it's really depend on the regional economy how to deal with this. I know the phenomena, we call it the Dutch disease, when the mining investment come, and this make the other businesses less attractive. But as I say, that it's not easy to deal with. But the first thing to do is we have to realize that it's not a good thing to experience. So we have to find a way to deal with, and very specific. We are dealing with the regional have to find their comparative advantage that they can develop. So by diversifying this comparative advantage, some of the problem, because mining regions also could not identify this other competitive advantage. So when mining come, they simply work in mining companies.
And from Tony Smith, governments must have planning regimes to deal with closure, royalty payments or bonds to minimise the legacy of closure. Like the Coal Authority in the UK, it's still dealing with subsidence, mine water rebound, etc. Would you like to discuss this, please?
Yeah, dealing with this, okay. Mining closure is a problem. And what in general mining regions and the governments try to force mining companies to do is to deal with what the mining company has caused. Like they require mining companies to put a certain amount of bond for the closure, but it's mainly to deal with to deal with environmental problems. But these social economic problems, actually, it's beyond a single mining company responsibility or ability to do that. Okay, the mining company in mining closure, they might look after their former workers, but they could not deal with the other workers that has no direct relations with them. So these are responsibility of mining regions, and it's all beyond the bond that a mining company should should save in the beginning of mining. So the mining regions, the government should be aware of this and use these mineral revenues to prevent this problem in the future. But as I said before, it is not just happen in the end of mining. So these mitigation strategies should be start from the very first day of mining. Now, we are not waiting to mining closure, because as we've seen this, sudden mine closure is even more than a planet closure. So it could be happen anytime. Nobody expect this COVID. So we should start it from the very first day of mining, and the government should responsible for this using the mining, for instance, mining revenue, or they can in many cases they can deal with mining companies to ask sharing infrastructures with the local people to help the mining, or to help the other businesses can to grow together. So sorry, Alex is muted.
It would help if I unmuted myself, yes. I note your comments that social economic aspects of closure are not solely the responsibility of the mining company, but should come from the government level. I'm interested in hearing where you believe this is done well, and how do you improve the government aspects in weak jurisdictions? Thank you.
Yeah, the first thing, I know this research is very challenging because it's not very common. This is the reason why I have to look different case studies worldwide to give experience and to give warning as well to the government that if you're not aware of this must happen. We have this experience before, and if we are not improving, and if we are not doing something better now, it's just a matter of time that we will repeat this history that we have suffering in the past. Okay, this is the first thing. By telling them this, uncover the truth. This is kind of inconvenient truth. By uncover this experience, we might trigger the government to think that they have also the responsibility to do that. Okay, there is no single policy that can apply everywhere worldwide. It should be very specific context. But the first thing is to trigger, to wake the government up that they have responsibilities, and if they do not something better now, they just repeat what the public, the community had suffered just few years ago. That's the first thing that it can be many approaches, like sharing infrastructure. This could be a policy, or the policy exists, maybe the problem with the implementation and so on, but it's just very typical in different mining regions. But the main thing is they have to aware of these parameters first, that okay, we have to aware if we are mining dependency, then we have to be really concerned, not only concerned theoretically, but we can learn from the past that if we are not getting better, the experience must be happen again. Thank you.
One final question on a similar vein, but maybe just like to comment on. That when many of the surface coal mines in Scotland closed suddenly in 2014, I think there was a problem with miners seeking new employment in the construction industry. The qualifications of the Minerals Products Qualification Council may not have been considered acceptable by new employers. can governments do more to ensure transferability of skills and qualifications?
Yeah. Again, I'll try to draw a recommendation from the case studies. What was happening in Singapore Island when the mine suddenly closed and the workers was spread, they call it exodus, scattered through different regions, find works. And most of them were quite hardly to find new jobs because of the qualification and so on. But there is a certain job that was easily hired. They were the welders. So the welders from this company was famous, and it was not hard to them to find jobs. So the welders. So what we can learn from this is a mining company actually is a competitive or very well place to train. I mean, to increase the skill. One of the proposal of this that I have, one of these mitigation strategies I can see from this is optimizing mining facilities to improve local workforce skills. So the government actually can try to convince mining companies to open the facilities for to improve the local workforce skills, but the skill which are not exactly related to mining, not in terms of mining skills, but it could be from maintenance, it could be from environmental aspect or safety. We know that safety standard here in the UK is very high from mining. That's the reason why it's also implied in many sectors. The mining company standards of safety here is very high, so we can use this, and we can use a vocational training dealing with mining. So it was happened also in Sussex, Canada, when the mining companies there are very famous with the skillful operators. Or mining companies, government should try to find out which type of skills that actually a mining company can produce and can train as like their competitive advantage compared to the other companies, and use this to improve the skills. What was happening in Sussex, Canada, their porters workers there was very famous in heavy equipment operators. So they were easily, and the maintenance, so they were easily moved to another job because they are very famous of that. Okay.
Well, yeah. Thank you. It's coming up to 10:02, so I think we're just about out of time. But I'd like to say again, thank you very much for volunteering to give this talk, Rezki. It's very interesting. You've had a lot of questions, and they've definitely made you think. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alex. Bye.
Thank you very much, Rezki, and I think for those still watching, thank you very much for participating in this month's webinar. Hopefully you'll attend the next one. We've got another one coming up in a couple of months' time. This time we're looking at mineral ownership. So we're looking at the sort of like mineral industry from a legal perspective. We actually have a lawyer with us this time, so it's new territory again for the next webinar. But this webinar will be available on YouTube in due course, and hopefully we'll get to see you then. Okay, thanks everyone. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.